Ugh, who's that? Hey everybody, BTO Pro here. I'm gonna show you latest progress on the HAX custom element inline mode. I don't even know what to name it, quite frankly, but it's a breakthrough, big breakthrough. So I've showed this before. I touch this image, and I duplicate this image, and I destroy this image. And cool. All right. Let's mess with video though. So I'm gonna select a video, and I probably showed this part, right? Or I just throw a video on a page. Cool. In this case, it's this iframe thing, or A-frame rather. But this is the new part. So this is being completely generated off of just a few JSON settings at this point. And so to demonstrate, each of these buttons is tied to a setting, which then dictates what property it should bind to, what its input style is, and basically like everything about how to save it, its input validation, all of that. Think of it as content types, but on the front end. So what that looks like is this is in the actual video player tag. The video player is dictating, hey, this item can be scaled, it can be positioned, and those two options then have these with it. So custom elements can say whether or not they can be moved around. For example, layout elements don't make sense to do that. And then in settings, that first one, so we have source is the property. So that's the property internal to this element. And then we have a title, which is for humans. Then we have a description. The method of input, this is a text field. It's going to show up on our bar. We're going to have support for other locations for these, but for the moment it's going to show up on the bar, which means that icon shows up. And it's going to have that icon of link. It's a required field, and we're going to validate that it's a URL. So let's see what happens with that. Click. It's populated with whatever this address points to. Now I'm going to switch this to a Vimeo video just so that we can illustrate it works. You throw it over to that. If I get rid of this though, you see source is red. If I start to type, source is still red. Source is still red. This is not a valid full qualified address, whereas this is. Go. That's going to get injected down into this element. So the authoring experience was expressed by the video player, but yet none of the authoring experience lives in the video player. This is a behavior that we can mix into effectively anything to provide data binding between the ways at which you interface with things and inside the element. So let's go to the next one then. We've got caption here. Caption is going to pull up a text field. This is for a text area, and you'll notice that the validation is different than before. There's no issue there. I'm going to hit save, and then what that did is it updated this property that was added to the video, which is just a nice little captioned area for the video. Let's do the next one, responsive. So this was a Boolean flag on the video. I need to make it have checked by default in this case. So we're going to unselect that. Now this video is no longer responsive. I want to make it responsive, select it again, and again the Boolean flag I need to get cleaned up a little bit, but the idea would be that would enable and disable that Boolean. Then let's do primary color. This is a pretty cool one. So primary color, that's not a normal input, right? That's not a checkbox. So this is actually leveraging an entirely different method of input, which in this case is a color picker, and this is going to bind to primary color in this case. And then in the case of the video, let's say we do yellow. Primary color is then bound in the case of a Vimeo video to inject back into the address to change what this color is involved. Maybe we don't want to manipulate that color directly, and this will be a accessibility error silly thing, but I can make that tied to secondary color. So we did show some of these types of aspects previously, but those actually lived in the element. Again, this is not in the element, it's the element saying, hey, here's how someone can manipulate me, and then another element coming along and saying, I know how to manipulate things. So we're going to start to be able to build very context-specific, highly accessible, in-place editing and authoring tools with basically just a JSON array. Plus having one system it's all tied back to do debugging and make sure that these input types are the same. So style is another one, starting to get into kind of like drop-down options. This one isn't bound to anything, but just to illustrate that's the case. And then in the future, that we're going to add support for settings, which would then modal up and get you into some more complex settings. that would be, you know, type instead of bar. It would be type, you know, settings versus advanced or something like that. So we can pretty much wire up whatever custom element we want at this point, just with this simple array structure in our ready function. So happy Thanksgiving.